This program is brought to you by Stanford University. Please visit us at stanford.edu.
This presentation is delivered by the Stanford Center for Professional Development, providing graduate-level education to working professionals, online, on campus, and on-site. For more information, please visit study.stanford.edu.
All right, let's get started. This is EE 380, the Computer Systems Colloquium in the Electrical Engineering Department at Stanford. Today's speaker is Kristin McDonnell from LimeLife, and she'll be talking to us about mobile applications. Before I introduce our speaker, I just wanted to check, is there anyone taking the class for credit here today? Okay. And then is there anyone taking the class for credit that wasn't here during week 1? Okay, so have you watched the first lecture yet? Okay, so if you want to take the class for credit, make sure to go to the website ee380.stanford.edu and watch the first and second lectures, from last week and the week before. And during the first lecture, in the first 5 minutes, I gave an overview of how to take the class for 1 unit of credit, as opposed to just attending as part of the audience. And it should be pretty clear. Essentially, you'll attend each seminar, so attend all 10, either live or over the internet. And then after that, you submit a summary or a reflection on each course, or each week of the course. And is there anyone who was here the first week that's taking the class for credit that had any questions about the class policies or how things work? Okay, so just make sure to stay up to date on your assignments. Today's speaker is Kristin McDonnell, the CEO of LimeLife, and she'll be talking today about mobile applications. She has a bachelor's degree in engineering from Northwestern with Tau Beta Pi honors and an MBA from Harvard. She then worked at various companies and was an associate with McKinsey, a founding employee of Lante Corporation, and a marketing associate with IBM. After that, she held senior management positions at a variety of companies, including Hear Me, or Empath, and also at AT&T's Imagination Network, and at Electronic Arts. After Electronic Arts, she is now the CEO of LimeLife, which is a mobile applications software company focusing on games and software for women. For the projected growth of the cell phone or other mobile consumer software industries, the projected growth drivers are going to be in casual games and in the female market. So she'll be talking to us today about LimeLife and their software and kind of the future of the market. So this can give you an idea as to what industries and what applications will be growing in the future. Please welcome Kristin McDonnell.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to move this around. Can I move around, or do I need to stay in one spot?
You can move around all over, and the camera will alternate between you and the presentation on the screen.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here today, and it's great to be back in a CS classroom. I guess this is computer science primarily. So I actually was just a few credits shy of having a computer science major as an undergrad, and actually just got an industrial engineering degree instead. So I kind of wish now that I'd stuck with it and gotten the CS degree. So I just want to have a little quiz up front. Paradox. I'll give some prize. I don't know. You can get my Frappuccino maybe. Who can guess what I mean by the word paradox up there? From a CS perspective, or a software perspective. Oh, I'm feeling old. So back in 1985, I graduated from college, and my first job was as a computer programmer. I actually started a systems consulting firm with 2 guys who were leaving Arthur Andersen because PCs were coming into the workplace for the first time. So we started this company that basically focused on bringing a lot of software applications from mainframe computing onto PCs. And we had a lot of MIS directors at the time kind of up in arms saying, these youngsters are trying to bring PCs into the MIS department. What can we do? Please help us. So Paradox was a very popular database program back in the late 80s. It was actually published by Borland, I believe. So that is how rusty my computer science skills are. The last time I programmed was in Paradox, probably back in 1987, so go easy on me because this is not going to be a very technical conversation. my technical depth you will reach very quickly. So, but I'll have lots of pretty pictures to look at. So, all right. So has anybody else here programmed in Paradox? RBase? DBase? No? So those are all programs from the 80s. I did Pascal too. So I don't know how many of you kind of have the entrepreneurial bent, but if you do, I think that what I can attest to is that inspiration can come from very unexpected places when you're thinking about starting a software company. And for me, it was, I had 3 kids in the span of 3.5 years, 3 years ago. So my youngest is now 3. And through that process of being pregnant pretty much nonstop for about 4 to 5 years, I gained weight. And at the end of that, all those pregnancies, I was 40 pounds overweight. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to do something. I've been living in sweats and maternity clothes for several years now. And so I started to use technology to help me out of my problem. So what I did was I went to WeightWatchers.com. I heard that people lost weight on Weight Watchers after they had babies. So I went to WeightWatchers.com and had this wonderful interactive experience with this tool that they have where you can track what you eat, track how much you exercise. You can interact with the community. And it was this wonderful interactive experience where it was giving me feedback saying, yeah, hey, you lost 5 pounds, way to go. And it was all automated through a computer, obviously. And so as I started to lose weight, I said, okay, maybe I should exercise and kind of speed this up. So I found another website called myfitnessexpert.com where you actually would get a personal trainer assigned to you. Mine actually lived in Brooklyn. And she would send me these workouts on this website. I'd print them off. I'd go to the gym. I'd write down what I did. I'd come back and I'd log in. Okay, I did 15 reps of this with a 20-pound weight, and it was too hard. And so it was this interactive experience facilitated through technology with this personal trainer. So then as the weight started to come off, I said, oh my God, I haven't bought clothes in 5 years, and I got to do something. So I went to Bloomingdale's and places like that and was just totally overwhelmed by what's in, what's out. I have just no idea. So I went to Bloomingdale's. I started actually kind of looking at Bloomingdales.com, starting to look at like, okay, what's in, what's out, what are they showing the models in, to try to get a sense of what's in style again. And so then I'd go back to the store and try stuff on. And with all of these experiences, I kept on feeling like, wow, this is such a great transformative experience that I'm having with technology and having through these great websites. But every time I want to do something, I have to run back home, go to my website, log something, and then go back to my life. I'd eat something, I'd have to go log it. I'd work out, I'd have to go log it. And every time that happened, I'd say, you know what, all of this should just be on my phone. Why, this is a small computer in my hand. It's with me all the time. Why don't I have software for my phone? So that helps me do all these things. So that was basically my aha moment, was saying like, hey, I used to program software. I worked for Electronic Arts. I know how to make consumer software. I know people that know how to do this. Why can't we just start a company that's focused on solving this problem that I have? So that's basically what we did. We formed a company called Limelife, and we're focused on making women's lives easier and more fun, all through their cell phones. And so we are focused on creating those software solutions for them. So as an overview of what I'm going to talk about today, and please feel free as we go through this to ask questions, and there's really no rhyme or reason to the flow here, is to talk about the market opportunity in consumer software in the mobile space, to talk about the products that we're coming out with, and then also the technology platforms that we've built to run that software. Then we'll talk about how we do sales and marketing and how we work through the carrier channel, because this is the primary way to distribute software, is through the carrier channel. So instead of being like through Best Buy and Walmart and Target, as you are in shrink wrap software, we do everything over the air through the carriers. And then finally, to end off with the opportunities that we're starting to see around mobile advertising, that there's a lot of interest from advertisers to be able to reach consumers through their mobile phones, and how that is going to require technologies to do that. So in terms of how we think of how this mobile market opportunity is going to evolve, especially for the women's market, if we look back in time and look at how traditional media has evolved, typically a platform, a new device, let's think about the VCR or let's think about the web, it typically starts with content for men. And if you think about the VCR and the internet, both of them kind of had porn in common. The internet also had text sites in common. And that's how those platforms got started. But then if you fast forward through time, that it started to evolve to a point where they started to broaden the number of target markets that they were creating content for, such that over time, women's media actually tends to dominate the revenue drivers of a media platform. So if we think about the top 10 revenue drivers in magazines, it's magazines like People, Better Homes and Gardens, Good Housekeeping, and Women's Day. In syndicated television, it's Entertainment Tonight, Oprah, Entertainment Tonight Weekend, Judge Judy, and Extra. This is all highbrow stuff that we're talking about here. And on cable, USA Networks, Discovery, Lifetime are all in the top 10 of those revenue drivers for those various media types. If we look to the internet, you may have heard of a site called iVillage, which does over $90 million of revenue a year, making it one of the top 30 sites. And so when we think about mobile as becoming the next medium, which we truly believe it is becoming, we believe that mobile is going to be next, and it is going to follow this same pattern that we've seen laid down by previous media platforms. So getting into the numbers, Juniper Research, yes?
So, although they weren't in the top 10 or the top 30, had you looked at companies such as Purple Moon and Girl Tech and the like? So you were aware?
We're very aware of them.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. We were very, very close to them. So Brenda Laurel and my co-founders were very close to each other. And there are various reasons that we think that Purple Moon wasn't allowed enough time, and also just if you think about the purchase pattern around CD-ROM, it's kind of a non-female friendly purchase pathway. Whereas if you look at the popularity of Barbie.com or DisneyChannel.com, GroovyGirls.com, huge female audiences that are consuming that software in that way because they don't have to go to an electronics boutique, buy a CD-ROM, come home, install it, find that there's some driver that needs to be reset, and your audio card needs to be upgraded or whatever it may be. So we think that women are showing on the web that they are very willing to be interactive, and you just have to make it a purchase pattern that they like. So excellent question. I got asked that a lot when I was raising our A round. So if we look at the mobile consumer software market, right now it's about $17 billion worldwide and projected to triple over the next several years. And most of this growth, Juniper says, as Eileen pointed out, is expected to come from casual games and from females. And so that's where we think that there's a big opportunity, in that $33 million of growth. If we look at women specifically in the United States, way over here is the number of female cell phone subscribers in the United States. 110 million women already own the device. So that whole hurdle that you typically encounter with new media is, how are we going to get them to adopt the platform? Back when I was at the Imagination Network back in 1994, we were trying to figure out, we were one of the first online game services, and we were started by, it was called the Sierra Network, started by Sierra Online, and it was purchased by AT&T. And that was back in 94, and we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we convince people to buy a modem? So that was our hurdle. Just, we had to get people to buy a modem, and then we had to ship them 6 diskettes in the mail, and then help them figure out how do you install those diskettes. And so it was just a big mess. Whereas in mobile, women already own the devices that can run all this stuff. But if you look at how they're actually using their phones, very few of them are so far using them in advanced ways. And what we find, though, is this is pretty surprising to most people, is that women are actually, of these markets of text messengers and downloaders of games and apps, women are actually more than 50% of the people using the phone in an advanced way. They're taking pictures with their phone, they're sharing those pictures with friends, they're downloading ringtones, wallpaper, games, and apps, they're text messaging quite a bit. And if you think about the phone, it is a very social device, and typically women are kind of the more social gender. The place where men are more than 50% of the advanced users of the phone is with email. So they're about 65% of the email users on the phone. So we just think there's a big opportunity to basically, grow all of these markets. So that's what we're focused on is this is the Lime Life website. We are focused on women pretty holistically in terms of what their phone could do for them. So we started off with games. That was an easy way for us to enter the market. It was our background. Yes?
What age group are you looking at?
15 to 35-year-olds. And as we come out with more lifestyle tools that I'll talk about, it's probably going to go up to about 44, 45. What we do find, I'm approaching that age, is that they start to have problems focusing on the phone once you get above like 45. So it's just kind of a question of how much software can be written that's, you know, I'm sure people are going to find ways to make it great for 85-year-olds, but just how much can you expect that little screen to do as people's eyesight diminishes. So right now we're focused primarily on the 15 to 35-year-old audience. So we started off with games, and that was an easy way for us to enter the market. We were able to show the carriers that they had major gaps in their deck selection. Is everybody familiar with the carrier deck? Maybe I should define what the carrier deck is. So does everybody have a cell phone here? Okay, how many Sprint people? Sprint? Oh, I'm a Sprint person too. PCS Vision, do you know what that is? Yeah. Okay. Anybody know what Get It Now is on Verizon? No? It's expensive. Oh, you're not supposed to. Singular, have you heard Media Mall? Okay, so everybody, if I named your carrier, has a little software store on their phone that basically is kind of a WAP store typically. Sometimes it might be programmed in Brew in the case of Verizon, and it is basically a software store that's always changing, and they're always updating it. It's almost like the Amazon of software for your phone. And so I just named the names of what those software stores are, and that's called the carrier deck. And that is how we distribute software. So you're not alone in not knowing that this thing exists, because about 65% of the people in the United States don't know that this exists. So they're not even aware that they can download stuff over the air to their phone. Does it surprise you that so many people don't know that? So like I've had journalists who are supposedly like the tech writers say, okay, so what 800 number do I call to download a ringtone to my phone? And they're like, no. You just go to your phone. And so basically you go to the store, you can browse through the categories of content. It'll say like games, ringtone, wallpapers, applications, news, weather, sports. And you can just keep browsing in there until you get to the content that you want. And then you just click buy it now. And it over the air comes down onto your phone. Yeah?
How many people do you have a relationship with to deliver your product?
How many people?
Yeah,
6.
You have 6, and they are?
Do you want their names?
Well.
Tammy. I'm serious. Okay, so there are 4 major carriers in the United States that cover 85% of the U.S. market, and there are probably 2 to 4 people at the carriers that really make the decisions about what content they're going to carry, how prominently they're going to place it within that deck, because right now the deck is a very linear browsing experience. There's very little search.
What is the nature of your relationship with them? You have to, it's not an open thing. You have
No,
to have
you have to pitch and sell. It's almost like going to Walmart and saying, hey, Walmart, I want this shelf space. Here's the product I'm going to give you. Here's when I'm going to give it to you. Here's how I'm going to market it. And
what about the platform relationships, the software relationships that you have to, you have to
so
buy
Qualcomm.
kits.
So Qualcomm has developed a platform called Brew, and Brew runs on Verizon as well as smaller carriers like Alltel, U.S. Cellular, Midwest Cellular, a lot of Latin American carriers. So basically what Qualcomm has created is this Brew environment where carriers can pretty easily become a part of that ecosystem. And it's basically kind of an operating system that you write to. And so what you do is you create your software for all the handsets within that Brew system. So typically you'll say, okay, what are the top selling handsets on Verizon? And you port your software to all those handsets, which is a painful part of this market. Then you upload the software to the Brew website, and you set a price point, and then Verizon or whomever can say, okay, I'm going to accept this on my deck, and they'll download it into their system and launch it to consumers. And similarly, you can set a price point for Latin America, knowing that you have to have a slightly lower price to sell in those markets. So that's kind of the most efficient ecosystem that exists from a kind of software platform perspective in this market. The other platform is J2ME, which is Java-based. And so that's more like Sprint and Singular and T-Mobile are on that operating system. So as you do software development, you're basically choosing which, am I going to start with, Brew or J2ME? And if you pick one, and then you say, okay, what are my 3 reference handsets? And usually you'll pick like a small, medium, and large handset so that you're constraining yourself design-wise as you go toward those targets. And then once you have those reference handsets, then you start porting to the children of those handsets, and then also kind of the, not necessarily the children, it could be totally other brands. But typically you're going to port to about 50 handsets per carrier or more. So the companies that have gotten really big in mobile software are actually porting to like thousands of handsets, and they're doing worldwide distribution on hundreds of carriers worldwide. So they've really made a manufacturing process out of the software development environment, where they have created all these tools up front in terms of like they're constraining their software developers to say, you have to develop this game or application or whatever it may be, and this is something that we've developed too, to operate within this framework. And as you go toward those reference handsets, we can very quickly port onto these other devices because we're operating within this framework that already knows some of the nuances of those target handsets at the very end.
Are those software development kits accessible, readily accessible, or do you have to have a relationship with the carrier?
With Qualcomm, you might be able to get a lot of information about it. I'm trying to remember how it, if it was, we had the Verizon relationship first or the Qualcomm relationship first. But you can go on the Qualcomm site and just look for Brew, B-R-E-W, and just see how deep you can go, because it may be that they freely allow access to the SDKs, but they know that until Verizon, says, yes, you're a partner, that you're not going to be picked up. So you probably don't have access to that part where you're uploading software into the system. So we definitely have a contractual relationship with Qualcomm. Yeah.
In that agreement, do you guys pay Qualcomm to use their Brew, and how much? Like,
Yes.
is there per revenue basis or per
Right.
software, no matter how much is your audience?
Right. So, so basically, why don't I fast forward to this little ecosystem? Okay. So here is we have a platform that allows us to take web assets and create them into mobile content. But let's not look at that part for a second. Okay, so out here we have consumers that are on Brew and J2ME phones. They are connected to these carriers. And in the case of Verizon, they're connected to Qualcomm through this Brew relationship. So what happens is that when we sell our content, that content is sitting on the carrier's servers because they're running this vending machine. Or in the case of Brew, it's probably sitting on a Qualcomm server and being served out. And basically, it's being downloaded to the consumer's phones over the air because they say, yep, buy it now. The carrier then puts a item on that consumer's bill that said, you downloaded, so for instance, we publish InStyle magazine on mobile. So you downloaded InStyle mobile, it's $4.99 a month. Every month you're going to get this thing on your carrier bill. It says InStyle mobile $4.99. So the consumer then pays the carrier $70 for their whole bill, $4.99 of which is from InStyle mobile. In the case of Brew, or Qualcomm, or Verizon, Verizon takes 20% and gives that to Qualcomm. Verizon then takes another chunk for themselves. They give the rest to us. And then since we're partnered with Time Inc. way back over here on the partner content feed, we then give a piece of that back to Time Inc. And so if you start thinking about that in terms of like the ringtone business, and you think about all the rights holders, that is also a big kind of issue within the industry, is that when you start getting to ringtones, and it's kind of already a saturated market, but all the rights holders that people have to think about in terms of who owns the rights to those ringtones and or to the music and things like that is. So anyway, so basically you split the pie a lot of ways, and that's how that works. So I don't believe that we had to pay Qualcomm anything up front. I think it's all kind of on the back end after you're generating revenue.
Anybody coming and presenting some sort of software to be used on their deck?
Are the carriers?
No, like Qualcomm, like to use their brew.
So Qualcomm doesn't buy any content.
To use that platform.
So you would only use it if you plan on selling your software through a brew carrier. So you would need a relationship with a brew carrier who said, yes, I am going to put your content on my deck, and I think that that's how you can start that kind of relationship. And it's pretty hard to get that with Verizon. It's you have to be pretty innovative, and luckily we came in with a pretty compelling quantitative argument that showed, here's the kind of games that women are playing on the web, here are the kind of games you have on your deck. There's a mismatch. You're missing this opportunity to reach female gamers. Yeah.
Question. So I'm sort of a web-centric person myself. And as my comment earlier, I don't buy things on my cell phone because it costs money. Whereas most things on the web, I think, most of us are used to free.
Yes.
Advertising supported, in fact.
Yes.
Would be sort of way going forward. So do you kind of see things eventually evolving to the point where it's going to be, InStyle magazine says, we'd love to give you a subscription because we need more eyeballs. And, hey, mobile, that's another pair of eyeballs.
Right.
And in fact, it's probably,
right.
you could make an argument that it's an above average and more valuable there.
Yes. So I'll show you how we're starting down that path. So the whole industry is just kind of starting down the whole advertising path. As I mentioned before, advertisers are very interested in reaching consumers through their phones, because if they can establish a relationship of trust with this consumer, that phone's with that consumer all the time. If the consumer could say like, hey, I'm in Safeway, send me the coupon, send me any coupons that are relevant to stuff I want to buy, or if they can cause people to go into a Burger King instead of a McDonald's or whatever it may be, advertisers see the value in that. So, so basically, is anybody familiar with InStyle magazine in here? It's a fashion magazine, lots of celebrities in it, look of the week, parties, all this stuff. So, you guys are all, you're all closet InStyle readers, I can tell. Actually, our head of server architecture sent out an email. He's like, I bought my first magazine ever yesterday. And he had bought InStyle because we're actually, InStyle is advertising the mobile application in their magazine this month. So anyway, so here's the interface of InStyle Mobile. And if you see that big white box down in the lower right-hand corner, that is actually an ad spot. Let's see, how can I show this to you? Where is my, okay, so right there, that big white box is supposed to have an ad in it. And it's clickable, and it takes you then to a full screen ad. So what's happening right now is that the carriers are being very careful about allowing advertising within mobile applications, because their concern is, how do we protect that $65 of voice revenue? Forget about that $4.99 from these mobile content publishers. It's really that $65 of voice minutes that they have to voice revenue that they have to protect. So they are moving toward experimenting and understanding how much advertising are consumers willing to accept on their mobile phones. And so that's actually, we've built a Brew and J2ME ad server. So that's my other slightly technical slide, is we've actually built an ad server that it's web-based, and we can basically serve ads into these mobile applications. So this is just kind of an example of, if we did do advertising, how a target ad might look. But it's, the advertising side of things is a big growth area. There are lots of companies that are already trying to vie for it. There's a lot of questions about whether the carriers are going to completely try to control it, or if they will have technology companies come in and, you know, basically serve the ads into their phones. There's also a question of, will the carriers standardize across all carriers on a technology solution, or is it going to be you have to buy ads on Sprint, and then you have to buy ads on Singular, and then you have to buy ads on Verizon, and it's going to be a different ad buy for each one. And so it needs to work itself out. It's very different than the internet. I came from internet and advertising supported. Does anybody know MPlayer, the online game service? So I used to, I was the VP of marketing at MPlayer, and it was an online game service for hardcore gamers. We were all ad supported. And so that's my mentality as well, is just, you know, lots of openness and freedom and you know, lots of ads. But this is just a very different environment to operate in, where you're just, you know, very, have to do what the carriers say. Yes?
So you touched on this earlier, but in regards to like if you're in Safeway and getting, you know, coupons or whatever, have you done any like location-based advertising? Mm-hmm. And if so, are there privacy issues in that? And what sort of things are you facing?
Right. So, so when I was talking about the Safeway example, what I intended is that you would have some kind of interface where you can say, "I'm in Safeway." Where you, but there, yeah. So, yeah. So there is a lot of privacy concerns about, you know, pinpointing where a cell phone is at any time and being able to serve ads based on that pinpoint location. And so that is another big concern, is how much will consumers allow the carriers to tell advertisers or an ad serving company, hey, you know, Joe's over at Safeway right now, serve the Safeway ad to him, versus Joe saying, I'm at Safeway, I want the coupon sent to me. So that is just another part of this whole thing that needs to be worked out. Yeah.
So have you, I'm just wondering, like, why would I need to download an application for InStyle Magazine? Like, wouldn't they have a website that I could go on my phone's browser? I mean, it's equivalent of, like, on my PC downloading an application for InStyle Magazine, which I'd never do. I'd rather go to a website.
Right.
It's easy and fast.
Yep. So it's all a degree of interactivity. So, so have you ever been to a website that wasn't mobile optimized on your phone?
Sure. I mean, it's not that great.
Yeah. So, but the people are creating WAP sites, which is the wireless access protocol. So with the InStyle application, it has a pretty high level of interactivity. So it's almost like a community of users who are interested in the content around InStyle. So, so one of the things that you can do is you can, I can walk you through kind of a whole pattern, but you could be on your computer on the website, on the InStyle website, and you say, oh, wow, I love those pink shoes. I think very few of you would say that in this room. But for those of you who would, I love those pink shoes. I want to save that to my lookbook on my phone. So that's one aspect of the InStyle application, is that you have your own personalized lookbook of those things that you want to buy. So right here, I don't know if you can really see it, but it has a phone icon on the website right there. So basically you can save it to your phone and to your lookbook. And so suddenly here it appears in your lookbook, so that when you're out shopping, you can go to the guy at Bloomingdale's and say, hey, do you have this pair of pink shoes?
Right, but I guess like that's the same thing as saying back in the day before like there's JavaScript and Ajax on the web. The websites weren't as interactive. So and so you'd have to like, download applications to make things work. So do you see like cell phone browsers advancing where like they support Ajax?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it would. But
because then I wouldn't need to download a separate application for every you know, magazine or like destination I want to go to.
Yeah, so it's a matter of how much interactivity. So I think with games, maybe. There also Flash is coming to phones. So it's called Flashlight. So that's another way that you can get more interactivity, but still it's treated as a download. So the carriers are very focused on how do they make sure that this whole kind of software market still returns revenue to them and creates a thriving market. Also from this InStyle application, you can also share these images with your friends. So here's this share button where you basically can send this to your friend and say, I love this shoe, and then your friend gets that in her email inbox, and then also learns more about InStyle Mobile. So that kind of interactivity is extremely difficult to do with WAP at this time.
So as phones become more hybrid, not just cellular but Wi-Fi, I'm thinking of the Apple iPhone and devices like it. How does the interaction between Wi-Fi and WAP play? Because Wi-Fi is outside of the carrier's interest, but Wi-Fi is going to be offering the same type of content service.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question about, right now the carriers sometimes scrape content that they don't recognize off of phones, or they block if they see data streams going into a phone where they are like, hey, I didn't sell that. They block it. So it'll be interesting that if it's outside of the carrier's purview, what can happen, and then if you return back to the carrier, are they looking at your phone and finding stuff? I don't know how.
From your business's point of view, your business, how does Wi-Fi phone?
So for us, we're just we're focused on connectivity. We think that it's primarily the more connected women can be, and in a variety of locations, the better. One of our concerns is that one of the problems with WAP is that if you are inside of like a Bloomingdale's, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to make a phone call within Bloomingdale's, but it's pretty hard. So if you start to get into these locations that are hard to get cellular connections, that limits the use that you can have of your cell phone. And that's part of the downsides with WAP, is that it requires a live connection at all times. So you cannot browse a WAP site if you're in some place that has poor connectivity. So that's what we're just focused on, getting women to adopt higher-end broadband phones like EVDO, Vcast, if you're familiar with those brands. A lot of the TV video viewing that you may have heard about that people can do on their phones now are those more broadband type of phones that will allow much faster downloading of content, and like this, this is very graphically intensive, so the viewing experience is much better in a broadband kind of environment.
So if I want to buy that directly, can I do that?
Not yet. Yeah, so this is another issue with the carriers, is do they feel comfortable with the transaction of goods over their networks? So they are doing a little bit with like Overstock.com right now, where there is actually an application that you can download to browse Overstock.com, but you have to have an Overstock.com account outside of the carrier relationship. So the carriers don't want to bill any hard goods to the consumer's phone bill, because they don't want to get into, I can understand, the customer service headaches of associated with trying to have somebody return the pink shoes to Verizon, and hey, they broke, and I want you to refund my phone bill. So that's kind of another hurdle, but that's an obvious step somewhere out in the future.
Curiously enough, that service is available in Africa now.
Where you can buy pink shoes on the phone?
Where you can send money.
Oh, right.
The cell phone is your wallet. Constantly.
Yes, yes, and Japan as well. It's like your ATM card and your kiosk vending machine card and all that stuff. Yeah.
Buy things if the merchant has such a.
Right, yep. So let's see. So we've talked about saving to phone. So we didn't kind of go through how this is another. Somebody have a question? No? Okay. So basically, we're able to take these content feeds from websites to create mobile applications pretty easily. And basically, it's again getting back to that framework that you set up way early in the development cycle, so that when you're going downstream to all the port to all those handsets, that you've already thought about these frameworks of technology that's going to get you there. Another thing that we didn't talk about as well is text messaging. So another service that we offer is text messages sent to your phone. So your daily horoscope, your daily love tip, and basically using the SMS platform to deliver these text messages that are just, 1 to 2 sentences that women seem to love. Some of you may subscribe to sports scores like this. I know that the Giants have a $3.99 a month service where you can get Giants updates. What's that?
Wow. $3.99 a month?
Yeah. Does that seem high?
For just numbers.
Well, and it's like, if there was a trade or if somebody's injured or... Yeah, so part of the economic issue with this is that your costs as a company can be anywhere from from very low, if you really have a big volume of messaging going through your pipe, from very low to about 4 cents per message. So I'm sure that the Giants figured out, okay, if we do a message every day, that's $1.20, and then we have to share some of that with the carrier, and then we have to pay the guy who's writing this stuff. And so it starts to add up such that if you can't do it ad-supported.
You have to share with the carrier despite the fact that the carrier has already sold text messaging privileges to the consumer?
Yes.
So they get to collect from both ends?
Yes. It's called...
A monopoly.
Yeah, well, a little bigger than a monopoly, but yeah.
Quadruple.
Yeah, it's a little constrained. So this is also another way that advertising seems to be going quite a bit as well. And a lot of, has anybody played Limbo? The text message auction service? Go to limbo.com, you'll get it hooked on it. Basically, they do an auction where the lowest unique bid wins, and they auction off things like Porsche cars and trips to Zermatt, Switzerland, and things like this. And so basically, they're getting you to text message for free your bid, but then every 5th message or so, it's kind of like, go buy Electronic Arts Carbon Need for Speed, back to your auction. So that is where the carriers do feel more comfortable, is in the SMS space in terms of advertising, and also in WAP. WAP is the other place where we're starting to see a lot more loosening of advertising around WAP sites. Any questions about text messaging? One thing to be aware of, though, SMS was not, so as you may see on here, you can text a word to a shortcode. Has anybody ever bought anything that way? So there's the carrier deck where you can buy software, but what is coming out more and more as a way of doing distribution, and in Europe, it's about 30% of the revenue is from shortcode or direct to consumer. So basically, when we could run this as a print ad, and people reading a magazine could just text that word to that shortcode, and it would be downloaded over the air to their phone. So for instance, with that InStyle mobile, in InStyle magazine, they're going to start running, they have an ad running already in the February issue, but soon they will be having a shortcode as well, where you can buy it over the internet, or over the air. And one thing that's kind of a frailty of this business is that SMS was not built to be a billing mechanism. So in terms of having high 9s, it's kind of like, low 7s. But so it's another issue within mobile to think about, is that if you are thinking of basing a business on SMS shortcode billing, that you need to take into account the whole kind of failed billing event aspect of it. Mm-hmm.
Today, I subscribed to the service.
To ours?
No, not to yours.
Oh. Disappointing.
But it was like it said, it's free, just text to this number. I did, and then I received, a software.
Uh-huh.
And
it said it was free?
And it was free.
So and what was the software?
So it's like software, but like using like Price Grabber online.
Oh, right, yes. Uh-huh.
So I did that.
Right.
It was all for free. Of
right.
course, I believe they just want to create a huge market of followers who
right.
are using this, and then they will probably introduce ads to their content because everything is for free right now.
Are you a Sprint or Singular or T-Mobile?
I'm a Singular.
Okay, yeah. So that's you're on your J2ME phone, and so it's much easier to download free content to your phone on a J2ME phone.
It was amazingly fast. Now my question was actually, so for Limelight, how do you see the growth playing out in the future in terms of SMS versus direct download of the software? Which one do you think is going to have a...
You mean in terms of the carrier deck?
In terms of the growth for the company, how
right.
much revenue?
Like which source? Carrier deck or Shortcodes? Right. So one of the things that we do as a company is we partner with major brands. So we've talked a little bit about InStyle. We actually have a deal with Time Inc. magazines to bring 4 of their properties to mobile. We're also partnered with a celebrity who I can't name yet, but very big, on TV, has magazines, all this stuff. And then also talking to several TV, big conglomerates. So our belief is that today about 10 million women every month go to the carrier deck to do something. Out of that 110 million women, we don't think that just overnight, suddenly 50 million women are going to say, you know what, today I'm going to go to the carrier deck. I'm going to change my behavior and start browsing this deck. So we do believe that these traditional media companies that do reach millions of consumers every day, in some instances, who are communicating, text cash to 40443. And we saw this with American Idol. If anybody watched American Idol where you could vote by texting, I heard that, what was it, Simon, what's his last name? Simon Cowell? I hear that show made something like almost $100 million on text messaging or something. It was phenomenal how much money they made just through the text messaging aspect of it. So,
like pay 5 cents to vote or something?
Yeah, well, it's like, I think it was like $1.99 per vote or something. I mean, it's something
How
large.
did they collect?
Because it's...
Who wrote them a check?
The carriers.
It goes on your cell phone.
Yeah, so basically, this short code, if this is tied to American Idol. So when the carriers see that short code come in, they said, oh, this goes back to Simon. Cut Simon another check. So it's pretty phenomenal what the power of traditional media can have to move a lot of people to do that texting. So we think that as those short codes become more prevalent, and I think that 2007 is the year that you're going to start seeing it. Where did you see it today? How did you see that short code?
It was sent to me via email. A friend of mine just
sent it to me.
Okay. That was pretty cool. So.
Okay. Yeah, so if you read kind of more teeny bopper kind of magazines, which I have a 7-year-old, so she's like, pushing it and getting these tween magazines, there are pages of ads that are just filled with this kind of stuff. And it's like pictures that big and little text codes underneath, and they all know exactly what they're supposed to do. They know, oh, I text this and I get this wallpaper, I text this, I get this ringtone. So I think that they're kind of starting it, and it's just going to migrate upstream to the older people until it's just going to be very commonplace at the end of this year, I believe, that every movie is going to have a text, this to this short code, every movie poster. Lots of consumer packaged goods are going to have short codes on their ads, and it's just going to be a very common thing. It's going to be like having website URLs on advertising. So over time, it's very important to us. Right now, 95% of the revenue in the United States goes through the carrier decks. So, but like I said, 30% is in Europe. Yeah.
Did all the providers agree on these numbers that it works? The one number, short code number works for all providers? All carriers?
Oh yeah, so there's a central, you register, almost like with URLs. You register for the short code, and I guess that company then tells all the carriers this short code is assigned to this company. Maybe they even act as a clearinghouse. I'm not quite sure how they've work this whole thing out. But now these are 5-digit shortcodes, and now they're doing 6-digit shortcodes because they're starting to run out of the 5 digits. So it's a land grab. So if you are a speculator, grab your shortcodes now.
So do you guys operate in Europe at all? I know your statistics were all drawn.
Right. No.
So, and now here's a very hypothetical question that you might want to take off the air. Do you think it would be easier in Europe where, let's just say, the gateway to consumers may or may not be the carriers, right? You might have, have choice to move between carriers, for instance.
Right. So the market adoption of mobile content has taken off much more quickly in Europe and Asia than it has in the United States. Part of that is because the cell phone for those regions is your internet connectivity in many cases. So lots of people do not have PCs necessarily in their home with internet connectivity, so they used their phones, years ago while we were doing the internet boom thing in the late 90s, and they were all like not really participating, and they were totally focused on mobile. So they kind of got 5 years ahead of us. I think it's narrowing now. The gap is narrowing. But it is a pretty different ecosystem over there. You want to start the Lime Life Europe office?
Sure. That's a job offer.
Got to do US first. I think, guys.
I was just wondering, like, for the SMS, I pay the same rate for any shortcode, or would I pay like more for American Idol versus?
Oh yeah, no, it's so we apply for different shortcodes being assigned different price points or different keywords. So like this is $4.99.
How would I know that though? Like
as a consumer?
SMS, yeah. So all numbers
so,
are like
yeah. So if this were a real ad, it would say. In our case, it would say in big letters, $4.99. In some less upfront companies, there's very, very small text down here that you can barely see that says, you agree that you're going to pay $4.99 to your carrier every month for this. And there's some companies that even it's like 99 cents each day. I mean, it's just like some horrific stuff is happening in the
This is different from like when I SMS my friend.
Yes.
Because that's a fixed rate.
Yes, this is premium SMS. So
okay, but they never tell me that when I'm like signing up for the carrier.
Well, yeah. So the carrier wouldn't tell you about it because you're going to see these all over the place. So you might see a big, let's say, Pirates of the Caribbean ad, and it'd say to buy the wallpapers for your cell phone, text 1234 to, or text Pirates to 12345. And $1.99 per wallpaper sold. So it'll say within the ad. So wherever you see that short code that you're about to text, just look at the fine print and make sure you know what you're getting into. Yes.
So this might be getting a little off track, and just avert it if you'd like. But how do these companies ensure that the cell phone carriers are reporting all of the texts they get? I mean, like for the American Idol, for instance, they don't have to report every vote. I mean, they just pocket that without paying anything out to American Idol.
Yes, it's hard to go check the carriers.
I mean, do you know anything about that? Or, I mean, like, it seems very close to, like, electronic voting or any other sort of security system.
Yeah, so it's, I don't know if American Idol had some special audit rights or if they had some thing that they put out there where they could basically, they were getting like a ping every time a vote was made, or also if your servers are serving the votes, so basically, well, here's actually, with American Idol, here's how it worked. They had all those incoming votes, so they knew how many votes they got. And so they could prove to the carriers, here's how many votes we got. Now,
so then how does the carrier know that American Idol isn't
cooking the books?
Yeah.
A lot of trust, I guess. I don't know. That's a very good question about how, and also how much did American Idol really understand about what the phone number was? But I think there are lookup services and things like that where you can say, okay, I see this phone number is coming in with this text message, and so I would imagine that there was some reporting back and forth and truing up and all that stuff.
Really private about their code and what sort of stuff they're running. It seems
Right.
I don't know, it seems like
there
there
are
must be a
companies that are you familiar with like M-Blocks, M-Cube? So there are companies called SMSCs, which are SMS companies that have been anointed by the carriers to run all the SMS traffic. So basically, American Idol did a deal with one or probably multiple SMSCs because they had so much concurrent traffic that probably one individual SMSC could not handle all the traffic. So basically, it's those companies would be who American Idol would really be talking to about all that traffic that's going through the pipe. Yes.
The standard answer to that question is it's legal. The protection, the way that is enforced is by law. You have a contract, and it's all a question of trust.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure they would have some degree of audit rights, but it's a good question. I mean, we've had cases where we felt like, whoa, something's way, we saw this much, because we sell these daily dose text messages from our website, and so we know that we had a certain number of successful purchases from the web page, and then it goes off into the SMS world, and it's kind of like, where did a whole slew of transactions go that we saw starting from a web page, but then when it went into the cloud? And so it's just something to be aware of when you do your financial modeling around an SMS business. Just be aware of, it's not as trackable as a web business is at this point. Yes.
But I might go to your website and download it, and then it comes to my phone and it says, oh, by the way, it'll cost you X number of dollars if you click yes. So then I might not accept that transaction. So,
right. Yeah. So we tracked the web page all the way to where it says you've successfully purchased it.
Yeah.
And that's where we then hand off to the SMS side of things, and that's where you kind of go, whoa. So that's
in my case, it's probably something that I would do.
Right. Right.
Or I see it and then I'm like, oh wait, I don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, you wouldn't have even got to that success page.
Okay.
Yeah, you would have backed out. So you might have gotten like 2 or 3 pages in, but it's that 4th page where we go, okay, that person has said, yep, send it to me. I want to buy it. I know how much it costs. And that's where it goes into that SMS stuff. Yes?
Quick questions. First of all, how reliable is SMS? How often are SMS messages dropped or don't make it to their final destination? And secondly, why is SMS spam not a problem right now in the U.S., and do you foresee that it will be at some point in the future?
So I have heard failed billing events from SMS to be anywhere from like 20 to 40% on the high side. So it can be pretty considerable. And in terms of why spam is not a problem yet, I can only hypothesize the reason is that there's an association called the Mobile Marketing Association that kind of dictates the rules of operation for the mobile industry. And they have, kind of these policies about how you do not spam customers. But as we've seen in the email world, that didn't seem to stop everybody.
You don't pay per email. Like if I pay 5 cents for a spam message and I get 1,000 of them in a day, I will call up the carrier. I will be irate and I will stop giving them my credit card number and then they can go rot.
Right. Oh, okay. Another reason maybe too is that because you have to work through these SMSCs and get, well, but they could do free SMS. So I don't know.
SMS gateways they could use, right?
Right. Yeah. So it may be that the carriers have more control in their space than in the internet, but I have heard in some countries that people like get off the plane and they get a phone for that country, and that like the first message is like, welcome to Germany or whatever it may be, and that they start getting these messages just popping up on their phone.
I used to live in Japan, and it was a big problem there. And in Japan, people don't use SMS anymore in the way that we do. They use email addresses on their phone, and a lot of my Japanese friends have email addresses that are like 20 characters long with all these numbers and stuff, just to try to make sure they don't get spammed. So it was a huge problem in Japan.
That's interesting. I'll find out tomorrow. I'm not sure. I mean, it's not the business that we're in, so I'm not focused on, hey, how do we do spam?
The fundamental idea is that you can trace where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I poke something on my phone,
but you can also, for instance, you can go to yahoo.com and send an SMS message from a web page. So one of the questions we've had is what keeps somebody from just going to yahoo.com and just blasting spam messages?
Because he will complain if his carrier lets too much junk in through that gateway.
Right, but how do the carriers know it's junk? How do they know that he didn't want the spam about Viagra sent to his SMS inbox?
But how they keep it out before.
I'm under 30.
That's right, yeah. Hey, that's the guy that's under 30. This has to be spam.
You can only send Viagra ads to above a certain age.
That's right. But the carriers don't know that you're 30.
Don't use cell phones.
Right. All the carriers know is...
That's the reason they're so spam, just not old enough yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait 10 years.
Right.
So I'm sort of curious, what was sort of the most difficult part about starting up the whole endeavor? I mean, it seems like you were coming from EA, so you obviously knew a bunch of programmers.
Well, actually, I worked at EA 13 years ago.
Okay, so what was the immediate
so the hardest part was probably, well, raising the Series A was just, it takes a lot longer than you expect. And everybody told me it takes a lot longer than you expect. And I was like, oh, this is a really great idea. Everybody's going to, just hop to. So it took 6 months, though, to raise the Series A.
That's really good.
And that's what I heard. I was like, that's good. Oh, my God. And then probably the, finding the right kind of talent and just finding the right kind of team, especially in what's a somewhat pretty immature market. So there's not a lot of mobile experience, and mobile, from a technological perspective, is really kind of a black box. There's not a lot of documentation. People ask about SDKs and stuff like that. We're still looking for those SDKs, and the carriers will kind of, have certain rules that they want your application to follow, but it's, you have to kind of dig, or they change it while you're midstream developing, and so just things like that you're operating in an environment where it's not like so we used to develop for console machines, and Sega back in the day viewed themselves as, we are a console manufacturer and we want software developers to develop for our console platform, so we're going to have software development relations managers and SDKs and conferences to make sure that all these developers know exactly how to write for the Sega Genesis, let's say. That doesn't really exist in mobile. And so it's kind of, Qualcomm does have a Brew conference. If anybody's interested in getting into this, the Brew conference would be a great place to go. It's in early June down in San Diego. And so Qualcomm is treating it as a platform, which is great. So it does make it a lot easier because there's a lot more documentation, but...
What about the Java folks, which is probably...
Actually, did you want to get back to your slides and finish the presentation? I mean, that might be interesting to some people here.
Oh, it's a lot of ads and stuff it's not a lot of marketing stuff.
Okay. I mean, if there's anything else that you wanted to touch on, or just go through them, we could do that too. Because we have about 10 minutes.
Right. I don't think I kind of skipped around. We saw wallpapers. Let's see. We have an ad server. I talked about that. So in terms of sales and marketing, basically, it's all about getting that top slot on the deck is how you drive sales. So it's similar, if you think of how would you sell a lot of books on Amazon, is you would want to be on the home page, the top thing, dead center. Similarly with the carrier deck. I'll show you a carrier deck, actually. So here's who we distribute through. Here's a print ad for InStyle. So this is actually on page 78 in InStyle this month. So it's not in this copy, but soon there would be a text to a short code down here on the print ad. So here is a carrier deck. So with InStyle, when you bring a big brand to mobile, you get great deck placement, which is a wonderful thing. So at the very top of Sprint is something called downloads. And so we were in the #1 slot on downloads. If you then look down, you see number 5 is applications. If you click on applications, you go to the next handset. We were the #1 slot on applications. And then under music entertainment is magazines. And if you go to magazines, we were the top deck slot on magazines. So this was kind of a huge home run, if not a grand slam. It did not cost us anything.
Placement does not cost money, unlike a supermarket.
So there is some of that does go on. In this case, it was InStyle running print ads in their magazine. And also that this was the first fashion application that had come to mobile. And so they were like, hey, let's promote the hell. So that's just kind of phenomenal to happen. That's very hard to have happen. But Tetris gets that kind of treatment, Bejeweled. You know, you got to have these huge brands that can drive lots of revenue.
So how much does the phone infrastructure know about the user? I mean, is it wasting valuable screen space found in style for sports geeks?
You're onto something. This is like phase 3 or 4 of how this market will evolve. But they're already talking about how there would be customized decks, and that when a phone is purchased at retail, that the salesperson would say, who is this phone going to be used by? And, you know, oh, a 15-year-old girl? Okay, let me set it up with the 15-year-old girl deck. Or, you know, just some kind of bit would be flipped that would say, send the 15-year-old girl deck to this one, and, you know, or maybe they say, here's a list of interests, check off, you know, what things you want to be able to see from this phone. So yes, a lot of real estate, because as you can see, this is very linear. If you wanted to get all the way down to chat and dating, you're like, click, 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 click. And for those of you who have been associated with websites where you know how things fall off, the more clicks you have to go through, it's the same thing here. So what you want to avoid, like the plague, in deck placement is how many clicks you are away from the top. And so that's something that the whole industry is very focused on is, you know, you got to get high up the deck.
I also noticed that the magazines listed seem to be very different demographic.
Yes. Yeah. Don't they though? Yep. It's, yeah, so, well, ringtones basically lead the market. So you see 2 music magazines up there. So it's really the people who are driving the market today are the heavy music enthusiasts who want, you know, the newest ringtone every day, and that they want multiple ringtones to identify all their friends. So they've got like, you know, 20 different ringtones on there. And in the past, like kind of how I said, you know, Maxim to Go, it was a largely kind of the 18 to 34-year-old male content that was driving it as well. So that's why we think there's an opportunity to fill that void. Does somebody have their hand up? Yeah.
In terms of your operational costs, how much of it is dedicated towards PR and advertising? Are you spending that much?
Very small.
And how much, how do you segment that? Are you going towards like more of the online way of advertising or magazine?
So, well, yeah, so when we partner with a brand, we just fall in line with their brand. So, so like with InStyle, we did not pay for this ad. They're wanting to promote it because it's their brand. You know, similarly, here they're promoting it on their website. So this is all them.
Those are the applications that you guys develop yourself.
Oh, for ourselves? That's where the carriers come in. So, so here is our games: Hollywood Hangman, Girls Night Out Blackjack, and if you scroll down, it would have the other games. So this was on the Singular website, and if you look at the pink boxes, we had something called the Sleek and Chic giveaway that we did in collaboration with Singular. And so basically, and our website. So basically, we were giving away a Chanel cell phone purse and a pink sliver, or was it a razor? And yeah, a pink sliver. And basically, the carriers were so excited to have something that wasn't black, a promotion that wasn't black, if you understand what I'm saying. Like, here's here's the very dark promotions, and to have something that was kind of very skewed the other way. So the carriers like to do those kinds of promotions. So, and that doesn't cost a ton because you're kind of just, the manpower of. Also, we're partnered with CoverGirl Cosmetics, and so they actually had on their website the Sleek and Chic giveaway as well. And then actually in the Singular stores, they were promoting it. Well, actually in one store. Very interesting to find out. Yeah, this was a test in one store. The top, what I've heard, top data revenue store of all Singular stores apparently is the Singular at El Camino and Page Mill in Palo Alto. And I don't know if it's because it's right near Stanford or what it is, but something's happening in that store. And there's only like 5 parking spaces out front. So, well, yeah, and so I was wondering, is this like a highly mobile community? Like, is the traffic into that store just like their mobile phone is everything? I don't know. I
doesn't Stanford have a deal with Singular? I understand that Singular works best on Stanford's campus.
Oh.
I'm a Verizon customer, and when I'm on Stanford, I get 1 bar. When I leave, I get full bars, and I have friends that have Singular. When they're at Stanford, full bars, and they're off, they can't get on.
Oh, interesting.
So,
okay, so maybe it is Stanford that's driving that. We have wallpapers that were featured in the Verizon brochures. So again, no cost to us other than running the business. I'll show you something. We're actually in grocery stores. Has anybody seen these video displays at grocery store checkouts?
Oh, yeah.
You loved it, didn't you?
Yeah.
So, listen to this voice. I'll try to get my speakers really loud if I can.
Hold your mic up too.
Oh, okay. Where's my mouse? Okay, so basically they're promoting all our wallpapers in grocery stores because like 45 million women see these every month. So let's see if...
Wallpaper from limelight.com. Simply text the word on the screen to 56658 to receive this free Winter Wonderland design. It's our gift to you, exclusively from limelight.com.
Can you hear that? Yeah. It's like came out shopper's voice. So anyway, so this is targeted toward mass America and running in grocery stores. Yes.
Do you do video in your application? So, for example, if InStyle magazine wanted to
not yet
have a video something,
yeah,
and you can display it.
Yeah, but that's part of what we see coming. Right now, a lot of the video is just you're watching video only, and it's not really within an application. But I think version 2 or 3. Yeah.
So when you talk to your customers, do you position yourself as like a content provider or content transcoder? But I feel like what you're doing is you're taking the content from InStyle or I don't know, some of the other magazines or and you're kind of transcoding it for the phone.
Yeah. So in some cases we are more of that transcoding of a website. In other cases, it's kind of completely taking like a television property that's all in video and reimagining it in software. So a game or a lifestyle application around it. So it's not transcoding. It's really kind of the same way if you think about EA doing the Harry Potter game. They're not transcoding. They're publishing software that's based on the Harry Potter movie. So it's that kind of approach. Yes?
So you started off talking about your aha moment.
Yes.
And you've now told us about what you're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel there's a disconnect between the two, or are you on mission?
So we are on mission, and we're also going where the revenue is. So InStyle, I feel, is right in the crosshairs of my aha moment, where I really want InStyle magazine on my phone, because that's where I can actually use it. Some of the other things, like dieting and fitness, are kind of, it may be a little too soon for this market because everything's still kind of in this game's wallpaper, ringtones phase of evolution. So if you kind of think of how the web evolved, over time it finally got to kind of these heavy-duty tools that people really wanted, but in online baking and all that stuff, but it didn't start there. So we're kind of going with where the market is and also when the brands are ready for it. So there are partners that we would love to have right now that just are still kind of like, are we, is mobile really relevant, and is this really appropriate for our brand, and so things like that.
You have to have relationships with the media companies as well as the carriers. There's a lot of relationships you have.
Yes.
And the scenario that you've painted reminds me a lot of the interactive television market. That's similar. People had to, the technology companies providing technologies into that. Had to have a relationship with Microsoft as some platform provider. Plus, they had to have a relationship with all of the cable companies, which is very similar. And then they had to have relationships with the media companies to brand the product.
Right.
So, and that industry has failed 3 times over the past 20 years in the US, but had some success in the last instance in Europe.
So I think of this a little bit more like the consumer software industry, kind of more like shrink wrap, where if we take the case of EA again, they had relationships with Sega, Nintendo, Sony, who are the platform providers. They also, and we have relationships with the handset manufacturers, Motorola, Sanyo, whomever. And then they also had relationships with the distribution channel, Walmart, Target, EB, whomever it may be, which is kind of like the carriers for us. And in some ways, it gets a little murky between the platform and the carriers, like in the case of Brew, where it's, kind of, it's not really the carrier, but, it's kind of sitting right alongside them. So, so I think of it more kind of in that model. It's already, a pretty big business, whereas I think interactive TV never really became a multi-billion-dollar business, and this is already, 17 billion. So I hope it'll work out better than ITV. Thank you.
So that'll have to be our last question.
Okay.
After that, you can stick around and ask Kristin McDonnell questions afterwards, but for now we'll go offline, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
For information on other Stanford seminars and courses, please visit study.stanford.edu.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Stanford University. Please visit us at stanford.edu.